Welcome to Heating and Cutting. In this chapter, we'll be talking about the fuels, what we use the torches for, and how to safe handle it. First, we'll be talking about what kind of fuel the torches use. The most of the torches that we use in the field is acetylene. There are some other gases, but we generally use the acetylene. And it becomes very unstable when it's pressurized over 15 psig. The acetylene is made from hydrogen gases and carbon gases. As most of you know, hydrogen is very volatile. So we dissolve the acetylene into acetone in the tank so that way it's much safer to handle as well as safe for transportation. Never set the acetylene pressure over 10 psig because we don't know how accurate the gauges are or what kind of condition the equipment is in. Moving on to the types of flames. We have three different types of flames: carburizing flame, neutral flame, and oxidizing flame. And each type of flame has different characteristics. And each flame has different visual effects. Carburizing flame has three layered flames, and both neutral and oxidizing has only two layers. However, oxidizing flame has a smaller inner cone flame. So let's talk about carburizing flame. This will have the lowest temperature out of the three flames, and the way to distinguish it is by visual and sounds. And both visual and sound will be chaotic. I think is the best way to describe it. Hard surfacing is just like how it sounds. We're adding a layer of hard surface on top of metal. How it gets done is carbon from excess acetylene is embedded with the steel to create a hard surface. The main example of this process being done is on a lawnmower blades. And as you can see on the picture, there's three layers of flame. I know it's a little harder to see inner core, but it'll be much more distinguishable in person. Next is neutral flame, and it's very important because this is the most commonly used flame for both welding and cutting. The reason is because this flame will not interfere with the surface of the metal that it's in contact with. As you can see in the picture, the flame is more steady, and you can't see it, but the inner flame will have narrow rounded point. Lastly, oxidizing flame. Oxidizing flame also runs at steady temperature, but hotter. Lots of people will try to get to neutral flame, but accidentally get to oxidizing flame. Two main things you need to remember. First, inner cone size. If you see the inner cone size getting smaller, stop and go back a little bit. Second is the sounds. If you hear air rushing sounds, then you've gone too far. It's a bit hard to see on the picture, but the inner cone will be smaller, sharper, and it'll be more blue. Moving on to safety. Make sure both cylinders are chained to the cart before you move it, because if it gets knocked over, if it doesn't get lit up, the cylinders will fire like a rocket. Oxygen gets stored at 2200 psig, and because of that, the oxygen cylinders has to be one seamless, solid piece of high carbon steel. Oxygen cylinders are installed with something called burst or rupture discs. It's a fail-safe device made up with low-strength alloy, and basically what it does is if the pressure inside the cylinder gets too high, over 3500 psig, it will relieve the pressure. Oxygen cylinders have double-seated valves, which means until the valves are fully open, there won't be any flow. When moving acetylene or oxygen cylinders, the safety cap has to be installed, unless they're chained to the cart. Acetylene cylinders are designed to hold 250 psig, so they are made with welded steel plates. And also, cylinders filled with porous materials such as wood chips, charcoal, or coke, which is made from coal, or kitty litter. And those porous materials absorb the acetone with the acetylene dissolved in it. As mentioned before, acetylene is dissolved into the acetone, and that mixture gets held by the porous material, which is housed within the cylinder. Always have the cylinder upright, because if it's laying down, that could potentially cause the acetone to leak out and create a very serious fire hazard. Safety feature on the acetylene cylinders. On acetylene cylinders, they have what's called fuse plugs, and they do not have burst discs. The fuse plugs is more for fire hazard. So it melts at 93 degrees Celsius or 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And if it's exposed to the fires, the plug will melt and slowly let the gas out instead of all at once. Regulators. The gas will travel from the cylinders through the hose to the regulators, and at that point you can also control how much gas you actually let through by turning on those handle. Handle on the regulator is called adjusting screw, and it controls the working pressure. And the cylinder pressure is controlled by the cylinder valve. One thing to remember is that working pressure gauge will only go up and will not go down when the torch is not lit or in use. And I will explain this later in the lab. And as you can see on the picture, usually the working pressure will be on a lower scale than the cylinder pressure. The hoses are made with stronger rubber, and as a protection, they also have metal cords woven inside. Also, the hose fittings are different between oxygen and acetylene. Oxygen is right-handed thread, so righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and acetylene is actually left-handed thread, so it's backwards. And not to mention, they're also color-coded. Oxygen is green and acetylene is red.